In national news, President Obama nominated Solicitor General Elena Kagan for the National 112th Justice on May 10, 2010, to replace Justice Stevens with a V. In settling on Ms. Kagan, the President chose a well-regarded 50-year-old lawyer who served as a staff member in all three branches of government and was the first woman to be Dean of Harvard Law School. If confirmed, she would be the youngest member and third woman on the current court, but the first justice in nearly 4 decades without any prior judicial experience. The state has yet to confirm the nominee.
2010, a deep-sea oil rig 5,000 feet below the surface in the Gulf of Mexico exploded, killing 11 crew members. The pipe had 3 leaks. The blowout protectors didn't work to stop the leak. The rig has been spilling around 200,000 gallons of crude oil a day into the ocean. BP fixed one of the leaks by using robots controlled by a ship on the surface, but it didn't lower the amount of oil leaking into the ocean. For another leak, they lowered a 98-ton containment dome to the seafloor and tried to cover the leak. The dome didn't work as the opening was becoming clogged with gas hydrates. BP has decided to try again with a smaller dome, but they said that wouldn't contain as much of the spill. But in the meantime, BP has put dispersants in the water to prevent as much polluting as possible. The Coast Guard has been doing controlled burns on the surface, but that only does so much for the amount of oil in the ocean.
A devastating downpour of drastic proportions submerged the great American city of Nashville, Tennessee. This catastrophe has been one of the costliest non-hurricane-related disasters to devastate this area since the Civil War, killing 30 people. Parts of downtown Nashville were evacuated Monday, May 3rd, as the rising Cumberland River, swollen by 2 days of drenching downpour, flowed into the streets near the country music joints and honky-tonk bars that have made this city a tourist attraction. The flood has caused nearly $2.5 billion worth of damage so far. Electricity was cut due to a potential hazard of shocking and killing people because of the water. A water treatment plant was submerged, causing Nashville to ask its citizens to cut their water usage by half to prevent the contamination of water.
Atlantis rose in its last liftoff on Friday, May 14, 2010. It's heading for the International Space Station, where a piece of orbiting space junk threatened to come too close to the station. Mission Control might have to order a maneuver for the station to dodge the debris. This 12-day mission is the last one planned for Atlantis. 2 shuttle flights remain after this one by Discovery and Endeavour. NASA is planning to end the 30-year program by the end of this year. Alexei Krasnov, chief of Russian Space Agency's piloted program, said it was a miracle that Atlantis took off without any delays. It looks like that Atlantis is telling us, please use me again. I am capable, he said.
Swamp Master Jeff Quadroki, an alligator handler and showman, suffered a severe bite wound from an 8-foot alligator on Sunday, May 9th. He was working an alligator show at the annual Cody River Seafood Festival in Newport Richey, Florida, when something went terribly wrong. A volunteer worker who ended up giving him first aid said, "Everyone thought it was part of the show, but when people realized it was real blood, that's when it got real serious." The alligator ended up latching onto his arm, and he ended up getting surgery later that night, receiving 36 staples and 22 stitches. Swamp Master wrote on his MySpace page he suffered from at least 13 alligator bites in the past.
Some other companies might try to dress up a sale.
I'd appreciate your input.
But none of them is Priceline.
Priceline!
May 6, 2010, David Cameron was elected as Britain's new Prime Minister to replace Gordon Brown. He has a lot to fix due to the financial crisis facing Europe and Britain's high levels of debt. Cameron will have to propose deep and unpopular spending cuts. Cameron asked fellow Britons to turn their back on a culture of selfishness, indiscipline, and reliance on state benefits that Labour's conservative critics have depicted as characteristic of its years in power. And I want to help build a more responsible society in Britain, one where we don't just ask, what are my entitlements, but what are my responsibilities, Mr. Cameron said. One where we don't just ask, what am I owed, but what can I do?
On May 13, 2010, an emergency medical center said 30 people have been killed and 230 people have been wounded in 4 days of street fighting between red shirt anti-government protesters and Thai troops in central Bangkok. This is where the red shirt protesters are making their stand and subsequently trapped in central Bangkok by the Thai army. The only thing that separated the 2 groups was a large pile of tires that was set on fire by the protesters. The red shirts have been protesting since mid-March, demanding the immediate resignation of Prime Minister Abhisit Vejjajiva, the discontinuation of Parliament and new elections. The protesters who began their demonstration 2 months ago are made up of farmers and the urban poor. The violence in this demonstration is likely to harden divisions between the country's poor majority and its elite establishment, which feels threatened by the long occupation of the city's upscale commercial center. The Thai government offered the red shirt protesters a peace agreement if they were to stop protesting. The government would hold the elections as agreed upon by the leaders of the red shirt protesters. The agreement was called off, though, when Major General Kadiata Shwadipol was shot in the head. The Thai government said they will no longer negotiate with red shirt
After
protesters.
years of the government's promising to end Egyptian state of emergency, Parliament on Tuesday, May 11, 2010, approved a government request to extend the state of emergency law for 2 more years. This gives the government right to arrest people without charge, detain prisoners indefinitely, limit freedom of expression and assembly, and maintain a special security corps. The government says this law would only be used in cases of terrorism and drug trafficking. Essentially, this law would be used to allow censorship and the shutting down of publishers and broadcasters, and to also monitor all forms of communication and to confiscate property. The government's decision was immediately criticized by human rights groups, political activists, and independent human rights monitors, who say they expect little to change in a nation that routinely uses the heavy hand of the police and prisons to silence political opposition. Prime Minister Ahmed Nazif told Parliament that language had been added to ensure that the law would be used only to protect against terrorism and narcotics trafficking. He also announced that, for the first time, the government would limit the use of its emergency powers.
Thursday, May 6, Venezuela's President Hugo Chavez announced that an offshore natural gas exploration rig leased to Venezuela's national oil company sank off the coast of northeastern Venezuela and forced the authorities to evacuate all 95 of its workers. People are unsure of the reason it sank, although security mechanisms were quickly put into place to stop any leaking. President Chavez also stated, "You know this platform is semi-submergible." At midnight, it listed, took on water, ceased operations, and then evacuated. A University of Rhode Island professor, James Apalouche, said that accidents involving natural gas rigs generally pose less of an environmental threat than oil rigs, since natural gas rises to the atmosphere while oil floats on water.
This current event project is brought to you by
Cherry Coca-Cola. It's what keeps our current event group going.